people are given notification that they're on live. Good evening. This is the Servant Leader Speaks. For the first time in 2020, I'm Ali McIntosh, and it is a pleasure on the eve of majority rule, and we're going to talk about majority rule. We're going to talk about the nation, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We're going to talk about how and where we will go as a nation. I have in my office, in the studio, Cornelius McKinney, the Deputy Servant Leader of the Bahamas Constitution Party, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. Good evening, Cornelius. It's good to have you here.
All right. Well, good evening to everyone. Let's get started.
All the way from Andros, he's in the capital, and while he's in the capital, we take every opportunity to talk about the vision of the Bahamas Constitution Party, the vision of how we go forward. He is filled with vision. Come a little closer, yes, so we can see a little better about what we're doing. But we're here today, and it's been exciting. Yesterday we was on live with Clint Watson on Beyond the Headlines. What do you thought of the show?
It was short, but we did get some points out in reference to majority rule, giving people something to think about and look at really where we are as a nation and where we're headed, and really focusing on each individual. How is the life for the individual Bahamian? Not just a broad category, oh, the economy is doing great, oh, their jobs. Looking at everyone, everybody has to be included.
Well, what is so interesting is we were talking about 53 years after majority rule. Where do we go from here, or have we even made much progress? And so I'm sure as we get into the conversation, we'll talk about that. We want to welcome Prescott Smith. He is watching all the way from Andros. Wave to Prescott. It's good to have you on board all the time, to be able to talk about the things that is important to the nation. And Prescott is one of those nation building who's alerted us a lot to the natural resources in the nation, what's the worth of it, and his voice has really been very strong in that regard. And so, I mean, we're going to talk about that because the BCP has plenty plans as to what we will do with the natural resources.
Yes. First of all, a number of persons in Andros have told me that I need to meet Prescott Smith. That has not happened as yet.
You have that, Prescott? Yes, of course.
So, the natural resources. I've told people, since being in Andros in the past, I've told people that Andros has sufficient natural resources to take care of the entire Bahamas. Just the resources of Andros is alone to feed everyone, clothe everyone, house everyone in the entire country. And there's sufficient natural resources in terms of, it's really in the trillions of dollars, sufficient to pay off our entire national debt, eliminate customs duty, eliminate VAT, offer free education, free
all kinds of things.
A lot of things.
I'm sure we're going to be able to get into that and identify some of them. And so we are going to get into that discussion. We want to welcome Cassandra Turner. I think she's from Grand Bahama. Sister Joy FM. Prophet Smith. He just traveled with us to Thanksgiving. But what we're going to talk about is coming out of majority rule. 53 years after we achieved it, after I think 47 since we achieved independence, should we as a nation have been further ahead in terms of its development, in terms of what the founders intended? I am sure the founders intended for prosperity for the nation. I'm sure they intended that we would be less frustrated. Several words in the Constitution, or the preamble of the Constitution, talks about not having slavery, being a bondsman. They talked about not having our labor exploited or lives frustrated by deprivation. And so that is the way and the mantra and the objective of a new nation that they formed. So what do you think, where you think we should have been at this point after majority rule and independence more than 4 decades, almost 5 decades ago?
Right. Let's take a look at majority rule, and let's look at when it started and what is majority rule. So we had a situation where a few, the minority, the elite, those who control the money, those who control the power, ran the nation, and the majority of Bahamians could not participate in the electoral process. Neither could they participate, with few exceptions, in the prosperity of the Bahamas. And It's still like that today.
53 years later.
Yes,
My
we
goodness.
have what we had was the elitists, what are called the Bay Street Boys or the White Knights. They lost power, but they still run the country because we have two major political parties that have been at the forefront, and they answer to the White Knights. The White Knights still fund both parties, and so those parties are beholden to them. And so the elitist class, they're still the elitist class. We know who they are. We know their names. Their names, they emblazon their name on their buildings. We
Okay.
drive past and we see them, and
The malls.
we know the families. Yes.
Yes.
And so they still are the elitist class. And now what you have is a sub-elitist class made up of black people, but they operate under the same system. So you had the
So you think that is what happened? We had white elitists, now we have black elitists.
Right.
How does that work out for the people?
the people
benefiting from that?
The people are at the same level that they were. There have been some leeways. They always give out just enough to keep the people intact. And so if you have a system and you have the majority of people calling for majority rule, but you have a system that has kept the masses down. But now you switch the system. You don't switch the system. Sorry, you switch the persons
people.
who operate the system.
Okay.
You still have the same system that keeps the people down. So you no longer have just the white people or the white rich people keeping the people down. You now have a group of black people that have raised themselves up, using the exact same system to keep the people down. And you have to realize that if you keep the poor poor, where's their income going? Their income goes right back to the wealthy.
What does that say, though, about the political process? Why we can now turn from the white colonialist to the black colonialist? I mean, to some degree, because if the system continues to oppress the people, it means then what? Is the same kind of, or category
It's the
of
same.
people.
It's the same system, and the reality, it is the same people running the system. There's just a subclass within the system. You may have the managers who control the workers. Now you just brought in some supervisors to control the workers, but they now report to the managers. So it's the same system. The situation is the same, and all you have to do is look at the average Bahamian today. How are they living?
I know we're going kind of deep in this regard. Do you think, though, the people who managed the economy prior to 50 years ago, do you think they still manage the economy? They still control most of the wealth?
They do. They do. With few exceptions, some persons slip through the cracks. If somebody has a brilliant idea, somehow they're able to get funding, they save, they invest, and they can rise above the average person. But there is a system in place, and it is part of our government system that holds the Bahamian people down. It is infiltrated the educational system, and it's also made its way into the church. So you have the government, the schools, and the church keeping the people down. Now, it is easy to break away from that, and it's done so by deception. So the church isn't deliberately keeping the people down. The school system is not deliberately keeping the people down, but the people who set the policies, they've set those policies and they implement it into these various factors, and that is what keeps the people down. And we can go more into details.
So you believe, as I do believe, I mean, public policy is very important, because the people who set the agenda, set the public policy, set the legislation, are very much responsible for how we set the tone, whether we are going to teach a certain kind of teaching within the educational system,
Right.
whether we are going to provide laws that empower businesses, empower young people to prosper. All of that is really tenable based on public policy.
Yes, let's be real, right? Most Bahamians are broke. I don't care if you have a BMW or wearing Gucci.
They say most people,
most
yes,
Bahamians are broke.
Less than $1,000 in the bank.
Less than $20 in the bank. I spent 20 years in banking.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is the majority of Bahamians are broke, regardless of how they would want people to perceive them. The majority of Bahamians are broke. And so, knowing that, the first thing you would think is you would educate the people how not to be poor, how to invest, how to save. But there is no financial education in our school system. If you know the majority of Bahamians were not wealthy, the majority of Bahamians are just struggling, wouldn't your first thought be to put financial education in the educational system?
If it was your desire to empower the people
If it was your
entirely.
desire,
Okay.
so that they could at least have the wealth or have the means to take care of themselves, to provide for their families. But there is zero financial education in our school system.
And I think that is important for the reason most children, even in grade 3, grade 4, usually know what they want to do.
Yes.
I want to be a doctor. I want to be a baseball player. I mean, the children as age 3 and 4 and 6 and 10,
Right.
which means if they can determine what they want to be based on whether they are watching the television or what it is innate in them that they want to be, whether they've seen it in their parents and their pastor, their whatever, it means then we need to begin to educate them at that level.
Yes. And that's one thing that I like about the Bahamas Constitution Party. We realize that the education curriculum needs to be specific to each island.
Okay.
Not just one broad curriculum and everybody in the Bahamas studies it. Andros has different needs than Abaco.
Okay.
Abaco has different needs than Inagua. And the people, you have to look at what are the aspirations of the people. What are their plans? And that is where we have to tailor the educational system to meet the needs of the people.
Now, I do believe, as you said, the Bahamas Constitution Party has a plan for education. We have a plan as to how we are going to restructure
Yes.
the educational progression of young people. How do you tell the people how we expect to do that in terms
Okay.
of how do we change primary, middle, and high school?
I'd like to cite a previous Minister of Education.
Okay, which one?
I don't want to call his name.
Okay.
I just want to cite I just want to give a paraphrase of his quote to show how ineffective the system is. He was in opposition at the time. He had previously been the Minister of Education. And so he was lambasting the current government about how in shambles the education system was. And he made a statement to the extent that the educational system does not need to be revamped. It needs to be thrown out and you need to just create a new educational system.
Restructured entirely.
Right. And then he made this statement, which I found was amazing. He said, I was Minister of Education for 5 years. And when I took over the office, the school system and the education system was in shambles. And when I left, it was in shambles.
So he did nothing.
He did nothing in 5 years. And he was saying it has even gotten worse than when he was there. It was already in shambles, and now he's saying it's even worse than when it was in shambles. But our kids go to school, they take these bags with a lot of books, they get A's and B's, and they feel that they're educated. But you look at what is their future? What is their and you just don't see it. I mean, if you look at what's going on in the world, we have people, I've seen high school students in America invent an app for a cell phone, and a big company comes and pays more than $100 million for it.
Wow.
But we are just get an education, but there is no real purpose to that education. And one of the BCP plans includes specific knowledge that's going to help you to obtain your future goals. We do basic education, English, reading, science, math, and that's fine. But there is no specific education that's going to guide you into the future that you need. And so that is where our educational system needs to be tailored to the majority so that the majority succeeds. The majority is not succeeding. There are just a few. And why it is particularly troublesome to me is I'm constantly with a bunch of multimillionaires. I'm constantly in mansions, and I'm constantly in gated communities, and I see what is available in the Bahamas. But the average Bahamian, yes, in the Bahamas, but the average Bahamian does not have access. And the saddest thing about it is they don't believe they will ever have that access.
This is something that I saw also as we look at what we're going to do with the educational system, and I was talking about us changing primary, middle school, high school, reshifting and shifting those in order to accommodate the needs versus primary school, high school. We just get them in and we just get them out. Many people are passing through, but they are not really achieving anything. But this is something I saw, and this is part of our platform also. When I was in American University, and we were students who went back after a long time, you know, when you're an older student, and they do an evaluation of the student. That full evaluation helps the student to understand not only how they learn or how they have learned in the past, but what it is they want from their lives. Now, I know many persons might have gone through this test, and I'm not going to say the name of it. We will introduce it later. But the test allows you to see what it is you want. Based on your feelings, your aspirations, you are going to determine, I want to be a journalist, or I want to be a doctor. I like numbers, so I want to be a scientist, or I want to be a teacher. And I saw that evaluation, and when I saw that, that was almost 20 years ago, I realized in order for us to change how we educate persons in the community, we have to make an evaluation of every student. So coming out of primary school, they are going to be able to be evaluated. Now we do there's a test that comes in grade 4.
The GLATS.
The GLATS, and another test. But we're going to have to go even further than that when we evaluate students to come out with what they need. I saw one person the other day talking about the point that what if they are done with algebra, that they've never used algebra before. But we need to make sure that everything the student learns, as you were saying, and I'm glad you finished that part, that everything the student learns has to be towards where they are going to.
Yes.
Let's go right to the point. Not just cause them to learn 20 subjects and they could get A in them and they don't only need about 1 or 2 for where it is they want to go.
I did a survey probably about 4 years ago of adults. And the survey was to find out of everything you've learned in 12 years of schooling, how much of it are you using today? And the average person said between 5 and 10%.
Wow.
So I said, what was that other 90% for? How can we change the educational system so that perhaps 70, 80% of what you learn is actually practical to your life, that is actually helping you advance on a daily basis? If you have an educational system and you're only going to use 10%, 5 to 10% of what you learn, a lot of your time is wasted. There is, like the Bible said, there is no limit to knowledge. There is no limit to the books that you can read. So knowledge is wonderful, but if you're just piling a lot of knowledge into people, knowledge that they're not going to use, then you're wasting their time. We need specialized knowledge. And that is how the wealthy get wealthy. They have specialized knowledge. If you want to be wealthy, you need the knowledge of how to manage wealth, how to save, how to invest. If you want to learn to be a pilot, there's a specific course of training that you need.
Yes.
And so what I want to say to the Bahamian people is, if you want to be wealthy, there is a certain course of action you need to take, a specific knowledge that you need. It's like everything. If you want to be a doctor, you want to be a mechanic, you want to be a gardener, there's specific knowledge. And so we need to look at the needs of each island. And I think one of the greatest downfalls of our school curriculum is the students do not participate in curriculum development. So we, as the adults say that, we say to the students, we're creating a curriculum for your future. We're creating a curriculum that's going to take you to where you need to be in life. But they don't know, those students, where they want to go. So the adults create a curriculum and then they tell the teachers, teach this.
And mind you, we are getting now where students are getting, we are a D- average for the grade point average for the country, because we have 13 subjects and that's what we're teaching, and we expect that every one of them will get an A, a B, a C. What we are intending to do, and what I see is very practical, that when a student get into high school, and we will start that earlier, when we start high school in grade 8, grade 9, so we have the first 4 years for primary school, the next 4 years, middle school. So coming out of middle school, and even in middle school, we begin to cultivate what it is the student want to do. So that by the time they get to the last 4 years of high school, we are now allowing them to pick the things that they want based on where they want to go. So every child is going to be mandated to have what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to accomplish? Because based on what you want to accomplish, you are now selecting those things to learn that's going to push you in that way.
Right. And I just had this conversation earlier this week. and I was talking about the electives, the amount of electives that the BCP plans introduce into the school system, where students have more elective than core courses. We know what the core courses are.
Yes, reading and writing.
Reading, writing, science.
Yes,
right. The basic core
things.
courses, so everybody has to do those. But then, starting from the primary school, students can start choosing elective.
Okay.
They have to be able to experience something to know if they like it. So you give them the elective. They can start in grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, or 6. They choose an elective. It's, oh, that sounds interesting. I want to try that. And they try it and see if they like it. If they like it, then they do more courses in that. If
what about language? I know I remember saying that.
Right. We're going to introduce much more language, because being a tourist destination, most of us should speak 2 or 3 languages. And scientists have shown that children before the age of 7, they learn language. It's almost automatic.
So we should be pushing that language in the earlier years.
Yes. By the time they're saying there's something that happens in their brain at age 7 where it now becomes a challenge to learn. So we introduce at least 4 to 5 different languages at the starting at the kindergarten level.
Wow.
We start teaching the languages.
That is very good. I like that. I just want to say welcome for those of you who are joining us. Paul Maynard, I see Clinton Roll, I saw JP. Some persons have come on, and I really do appreciate your coming on. I'm Ali McIntosh,
Cornelius
McKinney.
Yeah.
Joy, we're talking pre-majority rule. We're talking actually about what the BCP intends to do on this eve of majority rule, where we will go in the next few years. Our website, www.bcpparty.org. You can go online. You will see some, we'll call snippets of our platform issues, our policy issues. We have a document blueprint and mandate 2022. And we're going to release that later, not now, not at this moment, but we are preparing it. It's almost ready to bring to the Bahamian people, but we will do so over time, incrementally, so that you'll be able to see. But some of our issues are online. You can see what the party stands for. You can see the persons who are part of the leadership of the party and what it is we intend to do when we are elected to governance. But as I said, the blueprint, almost 100 pages.
It's just over 100, about 100 pages. I think 98 pages. 98, the blueprint for governing.
And we expect a little bit more by the time we're finished putting everything in it to release to the Bahamian people. But part of that is so that we can show the people how we have plans to govern and develop every island. Right.
The blueprint, it addresses every major problem in the nation, and it gives a solution that you can monitor, you can adjust. But it gives a solution to every major problem. Illegal immigration, murder, unemployment. The solution is in the blueprint. It is a blueprint for governing. It like you mentioned, it states each island, how we will develop each island so that no island is left out. What are the specific natural resources of those islands? What are the needs of those islands? What do the people in those islands aim to achieve? So we prepare each island for success so that we grow together collectively. For example, when I came in Nassau, came in at a very large airport, air conditioned, you could sit down and wait on your bike to come on the carousel.
Yes.
You go to Fresh Creek, Andros, you have to stand outside.
In the rain.
And wait on your bike. But it's the same government that provides a wonderful airport for Nassau, but they don't provide it for the Family Islands. And I remember some years ago seeing a notice that the government was going to spend $450 million on a new airport for Nassau. And why not spend $400 million on Nassau and take the other $50 million and spread it between the other islands? So you have islands that are outright neglected.
Well, that is an interesting point as we look at how we will reconstruct the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, because I realized something, and I'm from Andros, so I kind of talk with my hands.
Okay.
But what we realize is this: if a government, we were talking about the reconstruction of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, is that there has to be, when there are things that you want to achieve, and you have the amount of space and the amount of islands that we have an archipelagic nation, that we're going to have a plan for all of it, so that the development actually is spread out over all of the islands, because it is interesting, as you said, it is the same government who governs Nassau and governs Andros.
Right.
Why does Andros people have to stand aside and wait for their
Right.
their bites when Nassau people have a fully
Right.
automated, air-conditioned facility?
And why do you go on Bahama Boulevard and the palm trees in the middle of the road and the lawn is cut every week and the roads are paved and no pothole? You go Carmichael and it has the same median with grass, but it's grown up and mixed with shepherd needle. And then you go further to Family Islands and it's potholes, hundreds and hundreds of potholes.
Wow.
With the exact same government. So the government knows what an airport should look like because they've done it for Nassau. A government knows what a road should look like because they've done it for certain parts of Nassau. And so you'll hear, oh, we don't have enough money to do this, we don't have enough money to do that, or that Nassau is the hub, most of the tourists come there, so that's why we're pumping all of the money there. But if you continue to pump money, all the money to Nassau and not to the other places will never get developed and you'll never have tourists coming there.
So the purpose really of a government, and I want to go there once I'm finished with this point, the purpose of a government is to actually govern the entire nation.
It is called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, not the Commonwealth of New Providence.
And the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Yes, it is the entire Bahamas that needs to move forward at the same time.
So any government that comes in place has to have the vision that goes for all of the islands.
And I'm glad you mentioned vision, because that's why our educational system is failing. It is not so much the students that are failing, the educational system is failing the students. It's failing to motivate the students. There are some students who will just automatically study no matter what.
Yes.
But
the
majority wants to be stimulated. They want to know that they're learning something that's going to help them in their life. The young people know what they want. If you keep telling them about Christopher Columbus, you spend 3 years studying the Lutheran adventurers, Christopher Columbus. The average Bahamian don't need to hear about that for 3 years. They know it's not going to help them in their life. They know this.
Where it's going.
They already know where they're going. We still have English literature in our curriculum.
Yeah.
And most Bahamians don't even realize that English literature is the literature of the people in England. Why are we studying their literature? What about Bahamian literature?
Modern Bahamian history and all.
World literature, Caribbean literature. But you spend probably 6 years studying English literature. Why not Jamaican literature? Why not Spanish literature?
Well, I think we should open this up, as you said, and that is part of our policy going forward, because I think our development, I know that our development has to be now about future development.
Right.
All of the airports, all of the docking facilities, we want to be able to feed ourselves, so we're going to have to develop animal farm, animal husbandry.
And so many things you're touching on.
Yeah,
in the Bahamas, we used to have 80,000 acres of active farmland.
Wow.
80,000. That is now cut down to 10,000. Does it seem like the government has plans to feed the nation?
Clearly not. 70%. That means 70,000 acres have gone out of farming.
Gone out of farming.
Clearly we can't feed ourselves if we have taken 70 acres out of farming.
No.
So, go ahead.
And one thing I wanted to mention about why the educational system is failing is because we have failed to establish national goals. Okay. Because it is the educational system that is supposed to take us to our goals. But if we don't have a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan, a 50-year plan, what is the educational system going to be doing? It's just recirculating the same old education system that our grandparents did. The education system has not changed to this modern world, to this global economy. The education system has not kept pace. We're still studying what our grandparents studied. And the rest of the world has gone far ahead of us.
Because the colonialist is still in charge
They're
of
still
the nation.
in charge, yeah.
I think there's another thing, as we talk about education, I'm going fast and I'm talking about different things, but just to give them a touch of where it is the Bahamas Constitution Party wishes to take the nation, is tertiary level education. What it is that we want to achieve in regards to educating anybody who wants an education.
Yes.
What is the objective of that?
The objective is to help each individual to realize their talent.
Okay.
We have a Christian nation, and the Christian nation has a God, and that God has put a talent in everyone. And it is the government's responsibility, it is every adult's responsibility to ensure that every child is able to develop their talent.
The full potential.
The full potential. So therefore, every child needs exposure in order, because when you're born, you don't know what it is you want to do. And if you're not exposed, let's say your talent is being a dancer. That's
Okay.
God gifted you to be a dancer. But there is no there there is nothing in the school system that where you have
To
where you can
develop
learn
you.
to dance.
Okay.
It may be classical ballet. There's nothing in the system, so you never get exposed to that. I was on a golf course a few days ago, and I was just saying to people, I wish every Bahamian child had the opportunity to experience golf. If they experience it, they'll know if they like it. If they want to pursue it further, they may try it and say, I don't like it. But there are Bahamians who could become great golfers, great tennis players, great astronauts. That God has gifted every nation with the same talents.
I have a young friend, Amal Henfield, and I'm going to call his name because he listens to Servant Leader speak all the time. He is teaching children how to play golf. He has that same idea about you.
Right.
That if you introduce children to golf, probably they might like it.
And with our educational curriculum, we have to introduce a lot more. There are over 300 sports in the Summer Olympics.
And how much
participate? Probably 11 or 12 of them.
Really?
Let's look
we used to only 2.
Yeah, let's look at all of their over there. I think there are 96 aquatic sports.
Okay.
So we should be dominating in aquatic.
Seeing that we are so close to the water, right? We should be able to swim. We should be able to do those water sports.
You have there are different types of diving. There's swimming. There are different type of boat races where the kayak, canoe. There's dinghy. So when we have our regatta, so we can have there are ways that we can fine tune our sport so that we could participate more fully in the Olympics.
And when the last time we actually participated in the regatta in the Olympics? Not since Mr. Cook and Mr. Doing those.
Right, and so all of these we need to create the exposure.
Okay.
And the BCP has a plan, and I suppose we'll have to wait till we get it.
They see it all,
They can start
right?
looking at the website as we release information, but it's all in the blueprint. It's already there on how we're gonna focus on professional sports. Not just on PE, professional sports.
I love that. What I also like about when we're talking about developing the full potential of every individual, because that's part of what the Bahamas Constitution Party's full overall objective is.
Right.
Empowering people, helping them to come to their full potential is music. That I believe that every child, every parent who can, should send their children to music.
Right.
And in fact, when I created the program that became the Urban Renewal Program, music was a big part of it.
Right.
And part of that was that when you get a child involved in music, you take them away from other negativity.
Yes.
And so music helps children to develop more. When children play the piano or the keyboard, they develop even more, because it takes a genius to be able to take 2 hands and you're using the chord and you're playing.
Right.
So obviously, if we develop a nation of musicians, even if you're only using it for hobby, but we need to do that. I spoke with somebody. I believe that we should bring to the country one of these big music schools so we can develop to the height every possible musician in the country.
Right. And
think when we were exporting these children, these
and it's in the blueprint.
It's all in the
mentions
blueprint.
how every child will learn to play at least one instrument.
At least one.
They'll have exposure to more than 20 instruments, and also how to sing, how to music notation. And then it also has performing arts centers as part of the development of the nation.
This is so important because I see that I have 2 nephews who play at least 5 or 6 instruments. Every time they were introduced, their mother played the guitar.
Right.
And every time she gave them an instrument, they learned to play it. So she had to give them something else.
Yes.
So they can play the keyboard, they can play
I have
every
a nephew
horn.
like that. I have a nephew like that. He can play
Everything, and we're
5
talking about
instruments.
within weeks.
Yeah.
So when you open up the potential of a child and you give them, rather than buying them just a cell phone or buying them a Nike shoes, invest in a keyboard.
Right.
Invest in a horn, invest in a saxophone.
Right. And the earlier you start,
The earlier,
you don't have to wait till they turn 5. You can start at 2, 3 years old. The earlier they start, the more likely it is for them to develop it even more. When you look at Tiger Woods, he started golfing at
3.
Okay.
Okay.
And he became the #1 in the world. So imagine if we expose all of the little children, I'm talking 2-year-old, 3-year-old, to music, to language, to the arts. That's part of where it helps to develop our culture. And so we have to create that exposure so that the young people can try this, they can try that, and then they'll determine what they like, and whatever it is that they like, then they pursue that further, because now they have an elective and it's right in the school system
That's true. And we are opening, that sounds like we got to put musical instruments of all types.
It's in the
our
blueprint.
school.
It's in the blueprint. And
It's
the thing
always
is,
in the blueprint.
and if you put it in the schools,
Yes.
now it is no longer based on cost or parents' ability to pay because it's free. And so every child now has the opportunity to develop so many different talents, and they can do it for free.
Now, you know what is interesting? People are looking, listening to what we're saying and wondering now, how are they going to fund that? How?
Okay.
Based on
It's
what
in the blueprint.
What
Okay.
it is we want to do for the nation.
All right, let's look at
Obviously, there's a
funding.
way of how we are going to fund it.
And that is my portfolio.
Yes.
That's the responsibility I
Mr.
have.
Finance, Mr.
Getting this
Community
money
Development.
to develop performing arts
Yes.
center, to develop stadiums, sports field, put musical instruments in the school to allow the individual to achieve their goal. And the country has trillions of dollars in natural resources. This country. Let's just start with the land alone. Now we have what we call crown land.
Now, before you go there, let me just say for people who don't know, our GDP is about $12 billion.
Yes.
$12 billion is the GDP of the government. Our debt is now almost approaching $9 billion.
Right.
Of that $12 billion, so you have a $3 billion wiggle way
Right.
in regards to that. Now, taking that into account, where do we go from there? Now, you tell them what it is.
All right. Okay. It's easy. It's very easy.
Okay.
First of all, the Bahamas government is not broke. The Bahamas government is very wealthy.
Okay.
Most Bahamians are multimillionaires. They just don't realize it, and they don't know how to monetize it. Just the generational property. Most Bahamians, third generation or more Bahamians, have generation property. Your mother has some, your father has some, and then you have your mother's mother, your mother's father. So most Bahamians have property on at least 4 islands that they can have access to that's worth in multiple millions of dollars. The government has 2.74 million acres of crown land.
Okay, that's over the entire Bahamas.
That's the entire Bahamas.
Okay.
I don't know why they call it crown land when it's really the people's land. It should be called the people's land. But because of the monarchy where the queen. But anyway, that's another. We dealt with that last night.
Yes, and we will in another time.
But the government has, just the land alone, my conservative estimate is worth, the 2.74 million acres is worth more than $600 billion that the government owns in land. Now, if I give you $600 billion to manage, can you tell me that you're broke? If you don't know how to take $600 billion in real estate and generate an income from that, you really have a problem.
You ignorant.
Yes,
You have
I
no
didn't want to
vision.
say it, but
Yeah,
I'm glad you said it.
I'm saying it. I'm the servant leader.
The government has no less.
Ignorance.
The government has no less than $600 billion worth of land.
Wow.
Now let's look at our Aragonite. We have more than 1
Now,
billion.
before you go to the Aragonite,
Okay.
you told me the other day about the amount of people that are waiting for Crown land.
Yes.
What could happen there?
30,000 people waiting on Crown land. The government will tell you, we have 30,000 people waiting on Crown land. So if you have 2.74 million acres of Crown land and you have 30,000 people waiting for land, ching ching, you could sell some land. You have 30,000 buyers ready. There are some people who you would have to give it to free, but the majority would pay.
Would pay a little amount.
And so that's
amount.
30,000 customers. If I had 30,000 customers, I'd blow it through the water. How much income I get?
We're having fun. We're having fun.
So if the government knows there are 30,000 people asking for Crown land already fill out an application, shouldn't they now start issuing Crown land and collecting funds for it? The government can easily collect from those 30,000 people. If they collect $300 million, that can go a long way in helping improve our economy. But I just want to very briefly give you
on the natural resources.
Yeah, I want to just briefly give you an idea of how much the value of our natural resources are. We already mentioned at least 600 billion in land that the government owns. If you want to consider more than 1 billion metric tons of aragonite, and then more than 100 million tons being created yearly, you could easily look at another 30 to 40 billion dollars. Then if you look at the natural gas, easily $200 to $300 billion. If you look at the oil, another $300 to $400 billion.
So we naturally produce natural gas.
It is there in the earth.
Okay.
It is there. The studies have already been done to show that we have the natural gas, we have the oil, we have the alkaline mud in Andros. We have
Oh yes, we discovered
hundreds
that.
of billions of metric ton. If you look at a satellite image of Andros, you'll notice that all around the west side, everything is white. Look, the rest of the Bahamas looks blue.
Wow.
But you look at Andros, it looks white. That is an alkaline mud. It is smooth like joint compound. It can be used to create joint compound, paint, sheetrock. It can also be used in cosmetic, and it's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And then it is estimated that there are about $4 trillion in buried treasure throughout the Bahamas.
So you're getting all the way in trouble now with the buried treasure.
Yeah,
but
so
I'm sure.
when you add up everything, it is in the trillions of dollars that belongs to the Bahamian people. So no Bahamian should be broke.
Do you think the government is aware of this?
The government is aware because every time a researcher comes in, they always give the government a report, and the government knows it. There are people in it. I'm talking going back from the 1960s.
So we don't really have to be poor.
The country is not poor. The government is what keeps the people poor, because somehow the government took on that system that the elitist white, the colonialists, what they were operating. The leaders took that on, and they saw it as a way for them to control. And
so we didn't really get majority rule as was intended initially.
We've never had majority rule.
Because I'm saying that to say this, because as you say, we don't really have to be poor. No more.
No, nobody in the Bahamas has to be poor unless they choose to. And the government does not have to borrow. The government does not have to tax. The government can eliminate VAT, eliminate customs duty, and the government can just think of the assets the government have. If the government, when you look at the Aragonite, and the government's getting $2 a metric ton.
Yeah.
When you look at the container port and the government's getting 50 cents per container, the government can manage the natural resources of the country better. In fact, the
50
government...
cents?
50 cents.
That's what they tell us.
50 cents, yeah.
Wow.
So what I'm saying is the government shouldn't be giving mining license to foreign companies. Those should only be going to Bahamians. So that
and that is what the BCP will do.
Right, so that the profit stays in the country, and the government should be getting no less than 30%. If there's oil, there's natural gas, there's aragonite, the government should get no less than 30%. And with that, the government can pay off the entire debt in less than 3 years. All of its $9 billion in debt, the government can make schooling free. I noticed the government just said that students can go to college of the Bahamas free. But but how is that going to be paid for? The government does not have a plan, so the government they're running us deeper in debt.
We just continue to create the debt.
Right, and they say, we did something good, now nobody has to pay to go to the University of the Bahamas, but there is no provisions in the budget
as to how this is going
to
to
take care of the expense of the University of the Bahamas. So it's an easy thing for the government to say. That's why the government say, okay, from now on, no Bahamian has to pay to fly on Bahamas Air. The government can do that.
Yeah. But how is that going
to where's the money going to come from to run Bahamas Air?
Especially if there's $35,000 a flight. So everybody can go free, but who's going to pay the $35,000?
And so who's going to pay to run the University of the Bahamas? Where's the money going to come from for the lecturers, to maintain the building, etc.? It's going to come out of the public treasury. And so the government is putting the country further in debt. So what the government needs is a plan that works. So the government needs to stop taxing the Bahamian people and use its natural resources.
Well, that is what the BCP government will do.
Now that we've said it on this show, you can guarantee the government's going to now start saying they're going to do it, and they're going to make all kind of promises
as to what they're going to do to
but it's never going to happen.
Because this is the reason. The objective of any government has to be about how do you make full empowerment of the people.
Yeah.
How do you cause their full potential to come forward? How do you cause their full potential even economically to come forward? So some things, and we pay government. So certain things are duties and certain things are accomplishment. You explain what that meant. I mean, we were talking a little earlier about what the Prime Minister's speech,
right,
and how much things he said that the people that they've done,
right.
But what are duties and what are accomplishment based on what he said?
All right, the Prime Minister was applauding the government on its achievement over the last 2.5 years. One of the things he mentioned, $8 billion in investment in the last 2.5 years, and he's saying $8 billion. The government should be attracting at least $30 billion a year. I'm going to Ohio in a week from now, I'm meeting an investor who's looking at investing $3.5 billion in the Bahamas. So if I can bring an investor here who's going to invest $3.5 billion, you think the government should be bragging that they brought in $8 billion in 2.5 years?
But what is interesting too is that what we're interested in is having Bahamian-led joint venture in the Bahamas with foreign capital, but Bahamian-led.
Right.
Because in order for the Bahamian, see, that was part of Bahamianization and what Prince Linden and the founding fathers wanted. Arthur Hanna, Randall Fox, all of them, they were thinking, that first cabinet wanted Bahamians to become millionaires.
Yes.
They don't want investors to just come in here.
We need to go back to that.
running the show, and we've gone all the way into direct investment, foreign direct investment, but Bahamianization is where we want to go. Talk about that.
And so we want to create the environment where the Bahamian become investors, where you hear the word Bahamian investor more than you hear the word foreign investor.
Bahamianization.
Big
word when you talk about the Bahamas
all of the natural resources.
Body. Bahamianization.
Yes. And so one of our themes is take ownership. It is now time for the majority to take ownership. Ownership of everything that is Bahamian. That's the land, that's the wealth, that's the natural resources. Ownership. The ownership should only be in the hands of Bahamians. And we have the policies to make that happen. I want to touch on something that's interesting because I want to touch on one of the biggest problems that Bahamians have concern about, and that's murder.
Okay.
The amount of murders that happen in the Bahamas.
How do we develop the nation? Because see, as I said again before you go there, the whole point of a government is to develop the entire nation.
Yes.
So not just one set over here, because you realize, is this the same government doing this?
That's the question.
So if we're talking about economic development, how does that play out when it comes to crime? How does it play out when it comes to murder?
See, because if you develop the country economically and everybody sees that things are going fair, and everybody who wants it, the BCP has a plan for 100% employment.
Wow, that's good.
We will create 53,000 jobs. So everybody who's seeking a job will find one. And if everybody can take
good
care
job.
of their needs, yes,
good strong job,
right?
Okay.
Not this minimum wage thing.
Not this $210.
And then from the sovereign wealth fund, from the natural resources, some of that goes to the Bahamian people as well. So that will supplement their income. So they'll constantly be getting a check from the government from the natural resources that are sold, because if the natural resources belong to the people, anytime the natural resource is sold, the people should get a percentage of that.
But we are still working out how that will be distributed.
Yes.
Yeah, we won't say at this point how that will be distributed.
But it's in the blueprint.
It's in the blueprint. And in addition to that, the point is how we provide these free services too.
Yes.
Part of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, how the money is distributed, how we provide free services. Because we want anybody who wants to get a tertiary education to get one.
When you look at Norway, they've created sovereign wealth fund, and they have $1.2 trillion in cash.
1.2 what?
1.2 trillion in cash for their citizens.
Oh, wow.
Take a look at Qatar. Qatar utilizes natural gas. They built the largest natural gas plant in the world, and now Qatar government was able to give all civil servants a 50% increase in salary.
Wow.
The teachers and police got a 70% increase. And the government did that because it properly utilized natural resources. It didn't bring in foreigners.
It uses
locals. And so therefore all the profits stay in the country. If a foreign company comes and takes our oil, the 80% or more of the profit is going to go back to their home country. And so you end up creating jobs. And that's it. Let's say you create a job for 1,000 people. 1,000 people benefit. And there's some, obviously, their families as well. But why not just let the profit stay in the country so that 400,000 people can benefit? Yeah. Shouldn't 400,000 people benefit from the oil rather than 1,000?
How does that relate to crime? You started talking about murder.
Right. What I wanted to say is when we bring forward the economic development and where each person sees that now I really can own this land, people are going to become more content.
Okay.
There's going to be less frustration, less stress. And that automatically will have a reducing effect on crime. But I want to take a look at murder because our Minister of National Security said for 2019, which has just passed, that the government's aim is for 85 murders for the Bahamas. Now, 85 murders, and the government is saying, hey, we would be satisfied if we got murders down to 85. Who in their right mind would be comfortable with 85 murders? I want to take a look at Singapore.
But before that, What kind of policy that you think you could put in place to eliminate 6 murders? Because we had 91.
We
right?
had 91.
We had 91. So your aim was 85. What kind of policy that can only eliminate 6 murders?
And it also means that if they aimed at having 85 and they went to 91, it means that they failed to achieve their goal.
Yes.
So they failed. But what I wanted to mention Singapore, because Singapore has 5.6 million people. And they had 11 murders in 2019.
Wow.
So if a country with 5.6 million people can have 11 murders in an entire year, what is it that's wrong with the Bahamas that we would have 91 murders with just 400,000 people? And then when you have the government setting a standard of we'll be satisfied with 85 murders, there's something seriously wrong with the mentality of the people in government, with the Minister of National Security, and the way they think. The BCP plan is to have between 0 to 6 murders per year.
And we don't even want them 6.
We don't even want the 6, but we're aiming at 0, but there can be murders. There are some countries that didn't have any murders in 2019. So our ultimate aim is to bring murders down to 0.
So like 50% each year until we eliminate it.
Definitely cut it in half our first year in office, and then another 50%, bring it down to single digits. And we expect to have some years in the Bahamas with 0 murders.
Well, you know what I think? I think people have to understand when we are doing this.
And I just want to say this. I didn't want to cut you off, but I want to say this. Why is it that we feel Bahamians need to murder each other every year?
Yeah,
can we have a year where Bahamians don't murder each other?
I mean, what is that important? Should they murder each other?
Yeah, we were expecting Bahamians to murder one another, and then the government constantly say, "Oh, that's gang related." Denmark has mafia, and they have gangs, and they have more than 5 million, close to 5 million. They have like 4.6 million people. They had 40 murders for 2019. Even with the mafia and gangs. So it's not sufficient for our government to say, oh, it's gang related murders, because those countries have bigger gangs than we do, and yet Denmark is able to keep their murder count under 50 with 4.5 million people with a mafia and with gangs.
Well, let's put it like this. We have about 5 minutes left, 5 to 6 minutes left. What is important, and I go back to the preamble of the Constitution, it states that people should not have their labor exploited or their lives frustrated by deprivation. That is a very serious thing as to why crime and murder
it's a big part of it.
Is in the country.
And $2,010 a week is labor exploited.
Labor exploited from that. When you have frustration because of deprivation, that is also a matter why we have crime, why we have murder.
Yes.
If a man has a job, he's not going to go kill somebody.
It's very unlikely. Much likely to kill. And if your life is going so good, you don't want to risk losing your freedom.
Yeah, when you're comfortable.
But we have the government not maintaining their own labor laws. They're not keeping their own labor laws, so that government employees are now striking. Isn't that? I mean, how do you explain government employees strike? If the government makes the labor laws and the government breaks the labor laws so that their own employees have to strike, the doctors, the teachers, they're complaining.
Yes.
Why? If we have labor laws, why do we need unions? The labor laws should be doing what the unions are doing. The unions are not even necessary.
And the commitment of the government should be to the rule of law. And as you're saying, why does government employees have to strike against a government who is supposed to commit
their employer
to the rule of law?
And the government creates the policies. And so the government is not upholding its own policies.
Yes.
And so why should the people in the private sector do it? You have more government employees striking than the regular citizens in the private sector.
So that is why it is important that when people understand, if you want something else, you have to do something else. I'm talking about when we talk about selecting a leadership. So we've gone from the PLP to the FNM to the PLP to the FNM to the PLP for the last 20-something years. Over on the basis that if we don't like whoever's leading the PLP, we go to the FNM. We don't like who's leading the FNM, we go to the PLP. But the policies are the same.
They change the faces, but they have the same policies.
It's the same policy.
So you're going to get the same result.
And because what we have seen with that too, look at the creation of the national debt. In 1992, when Sir Lyndon left office, little over 650,000, I think, was the national debt. At this point, there is $9 billion.
Right.
Do you think at any point over the last 27 years Did we pay anything on the national debt? We've been doing what people do who's paid a minimum balance on a credit card.
Yep.
We paid a minimum balance so we can continue to use it next week. But really, the principle is still there. And so what the Bahamian people has to consider, and what the BCP is offering, that we are offering to put the country in a better footing in regards to comfort,
Yes.
in regards to stability,
Right.
in regards to contentment, because it is offered, it is a promise
Yes.
by the preamble
It is.
that we should not be enslaved or bondsmen to anyone.
Right.
That includes bank exploitation.
Right.
Our labor should not be exploited by the government, nor private sector, nor any foreign direct investor, and we should not have our lives deprived or frustrated by deprivation. That we
Right.
cannot go to the food store and buy food. We can't feed our children. We can't buy fruit. We can't buy fresh
We're buying
milk.
cheaper food, more canned food, and we're getting a lot of sickness, and now we have a higher medical bill.
Yeah, and so we are now seeing the result of going from one government to the other who is doing the same thing, who is committed to the same thing.
Right.
What the Bahamas Constitution Party offers is going back to what the founders intended.
Yeah.
And the founders intended that we would produce a nation where we go away from frustration, exploitation, deprivation, so that we could live in a more content
Right.
society that does not have the level of crime that we have now.
Right, and I told people over and over, the Bahamian standard of living should be far better than America because of the amount of natural resources with just 400,000 people to share it up. There is enough natural resource for every Bahamian to get $6.7 million.
And people don't even want to worry about going all the way there, right? They just want to live. They
Right.
just want to be prosperous. They just want to live. I
Yeah.
look at this. There are places, and we're going to wrap up in a few minutes.
I want to say, before we wrap, there's a concept I want to get across to help people to understand what's really happening in the country.
Okay, before what I'm saying is this: in America, and people think when they think about America, they think about New York and Miami and
Right.
Orlando and those big cities.
Right.
But you have cities in New York that has no crime.
Mhm.
You have cities in New York, not in New York, in the United States that has
Yep.
no crime,
Yep.
that doesn't have a murder. I just came from a city in Georgia that has no liquor license.
you're-
There is no liquor sold in that county.
You realize most of the family islands don't have murders? Most of the Bahamas family islands don't have murders.
So how do we recreate that in Nassau? We know it's a urban place, but we're
Right.
going to find a way to eliminate
and
and
it
put
goes
as
right
much
into
as
the
possible.
heart and the mind of the people.
If you want a brand new world, you have to have a brand new people.
Right,
And we
yes.
know where that starts.
Right.
That the church has to be part of
Right.
the process, not only of creating public policy, but in social partnership with the government in order to help eliminate
It's in the blueprint. The church has a role to play
Yes,
in
it has
governing
to.
the nation.
It was
The
the
church
intent of the
has to-
founding fathers.
Yeah, the church has to step up, and the BCP is opening the door to allow the church to come in to be a
in
part
more
of the government.
social partnerships. Yes.
The nation is not going to get to where God wants it to be, and it's not going to succeed without the church. Because you could make everybody wealthy, but if they don't have morals, they're just going to be immoral people. So the church has a very integral part to play in this new Bahamas.
Yes. You wanted to introduce.
Yeah, I want to just share something and what's been going on in the country, so that people can understand where we are. Imagine if you go to Walmart in Miami and you buy a bag of onions. One bag of onion. Now you're gonna go to a shipping company to ship it to Nassau, for example. The shipping companies that ship from the U.S. are owned by the same white knights.
Okay.
They own the shipping companies. So now you're gonna pay shipping to the same white knights. Then that ship is gonna come to the container port. The same elitists own the container port. So now you're gonna pay a container port fee. Then it's gonna go from the container port to a wholesaler. The white knights own the major
Yes,
wholesalers.
same person's
Then it's
owning
gonna go from the wholesalers to the supermarket. The white knight owns the major supermarkets. So you buy a bag of onion in America, you pay shipping, you pay the container port. I'm not even including the government. I'm just saying the white knights. You pay you're paying the shipping, the container port, the wholesaler, and the retailer. You're paying 4 different fees to the same set of people for one bag of onion. Now imagine there's a farm on Gladstone Road and you go and buy a bag of onion.
You carry it home.
You cut out those 4 levels of payment. So you cut out the white knight's wealth. And the number one thing that people who have money want is more money. And then they want to preserve that. So you're cutting them out when you produce. The more you produce, the more you cut out the people who run the money in the country. And so in order to prevent that, they give, once you become a member of parliament, they give you honorary membership in the Life with Key Club. They give it to all the judges. There's a kind of a bribery. Come sit with us, come wine and dine with us, and then we're going to fund your party, help you get reelected.
Wow.
But we just have these few little policies we need you to do.
To continue to stay in power.
We need you to
economics.
we need you to add some taxes. We need you to limit the amount of produce the produce exchange will accept from the farmer. Cut that down to 40,000. So that the farmer can't expand his farm. He can only sell up to $40,000. We need you to create this thing called VAT. Don't think Perry Christie came up with VAT. No, he was told to give the people VAT. And again, it's to extract the money from the people, to keep the people there, because the elitists want to maintain their status quo, and they want that for them and their children. And so and the government participates in it, and so they get to live and wine and dine with the same people who were their masters. They now wine and dine with them, and in so doing, they're creating policies that keep the Bahamian people down. And I would love a show where we talk about government policies and laws that are on the books that keep Bahamian people down.
Yes, that's sound like a plan. With that we are going to end the show. We can't talk all tonight, but we have talked. On this eve of majority rule, we just want to talk about where the nation is going, where the Bahamas Constitution Party can take the nation. We want to say thank you for those who are joining us. We see Kendall Colbrook online.
KCX,
oh my God.
okay.
KCX, we've been praying for him. He has had a struggle over the last few weeks, in the last few months, but the Bahamian people has come up in droves to pray for him, and we do thank God that he is doing better. He will live and not die to declare the works of the Lord. He's been doing a great work in the nation.
If somebody can take KCX some boiled fish at the Princess Margaret Hospital tomorrow, he's in male surgical number 3, bed number 10. Take him some boiled fish for lunch.
Oh, wow.
Call him and let him know you're coming, so you don't have 10 people taking him boiled fish.
Well, that's okay. He can always use some boiled fish. He can eat it for the 3 times of the day. But nonetheless, we do thank you. I'm Ali McIntosh, the servant leader of the Bahamas Constitution Party.
Cornelius McKinney,
the deputy servant leader. Our website, BCP Bahamas, that's the old one, www.bcpparty.org.
Yeah. We have a lot of good things planned for the Bahamian people.
And I do believe that we have this is not only the time, but the opportunity for the Bahamian people to look at a way to becoming more prosperous.
Yeah.
And the Bahamas Constitution Party can help you get there. We are the way to the future.
And within the political field, you don't hear much about God. But God is the center of the BCP and the BCP policies. In fact, the blueprint came through the Holy Spirit. The blueprint for governing the Bahamas, how to get the people to where God intended for them to be.
Because if we are God's people, He should desire for us to be prosperous and in good health. That is part of what we will do.
I want to talk about God. I love to talk about God. Let's do a show when we talk about the goodness of God.
We are going to do more shows. Yeah. But with that tonight, we do thank you for joining us. Go and celebrate majority rule. Kendall, I see you laughing. I guess you're going to be getting some boiled or stew fish tomorrow. But for the rest of the nation, we do thank you for joining us for this past hour. Blessings on you, and may God bless and keep safe the Commonwealth of the Bahamas until we are back again.
Amen.
Good night.